Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Welcome back to New Vegas, where today we're going to be taking a look at the lead pipe as a weapon. And the lead pipe is probably one of the most simplistic weapons in the game, and it's also a very common weapon that you can find pretty early on. Like, basically every type of enemy can have these, as well as you can find them just randomly around the Wasteland. Sometimes they'll appear in boxes. A lot of the time they can appear in the fire hose areas. So if you see like a fire hose on a wall, loot it, and there might be a lead pipe or a tire iron in it. Lead pipes are the better option than tire iron. This one's actually a pretty decent early game melee weapon. So the lead pipe requires 50 melee, which is kind of surprising with how early you can get this. And it requires 5 strength to wield. Strength shouldn't be an issue. If you're going to the melee build, you're probably going to have high strength. And if you're not, you're just planning on using this as your melee weapon in like a guns build, that's perfectly fine too. Most guns builds are going to be running like 5 strength as well. The lead pipe does 22 damage per hit, which is actually pretty decent. That's actually pretty good damage for the early game, and it's got pretty good damage per second at 56, so it attacks fairly fast. It is still a one-handed weapon, so it doesn't have the longest range, but that's okay. It still has decent enough range. This one does 22 crit damage, same as its normal damage, and has a 1x crit modifier. Pretty normal crit modifier there. Most weapons have this. This only costs 24 action points to use in VATS, making it a pretty decent weapon to use in VATS, honestly. As well as every melee weapon does have its own unique VATS attack. For the lead pipe and the unique version of the lead pipe, it's both the same. It's called Lights Out. Lights Out is a very straightforward attack where your person just runs forward and swings down the pipe on top of somebody's head, usually, or on their shoulder or whatever it might be. This deals a little bit extra damage, but it costs a little bit more action points. So it's okay compared to regular VATS attacks with this, but it's nothing way crazy with it. It does make it so you can leap forward a little bit faster, and you can actually make surprisingly decent distance with this. It's not as good as like the War Club if you want to actually be using this as like a leapfrog weapon to actually get more movement speed. It seems to be about the same as if you were just taking like maybe travel light and then running in a straight line. So it's a little bit faster than normally walking, I think, but not that much faster if you want to use it as that. This weighs 3 weight, which isn't very much, although this doesn't have very much item health. This only has 50 item health, and early on you probably won't have jury rigging, but there is a lot of lead pipes laying around, so fixing it up shouldn't be too bad, but it can be a little bit heavy if each one is weighing you down by 3. With 50 HP, this one does break really fast, which is kind of unfortunate for the lead pipe. For the general pros of the lead pipe, this one has pretty good damage and pretty good damage per second for an early game weapon. And it's also a sneak-in weapon, so that's kind of cool. You can sneak in lead pipes or the unique version of it into any sort of holdout area. And most of the time, melee weapons are pretty good in those type of areas. The lead pipe is no real exception to that. Major con to this, though, is that it does have very low item health. And that's really its only major con, because these are pretty easy to find. They're pretty early on, and if you can find a lot of them, then you don't have to worry about the health. But these things do break really fast, especially compared to certain melee weapons, which I find a little bit strange, because you wouldn't think a pipe would break very quick at all, but I guess it depends on how thick the pipe actually is. Let's talk about some perks too that can help out with the lead pipe and just melee in general. We have quite a few of them, and they're the same ones that we usually go over. So Slayer is really nice because it gets you increased attack speed, so that one's fantastic for any melee weapon or unarmed weapon. Piercing Strike makes it so that all of your melee and unarmed have armor breaking on them, also really good. You have Super Slam, which can knock down enemies, and if you knock down an enemy, it's going to be really easy to beat them up. Since the lead pipe attacks fairly fast, this does help it. This helps more with faster attacking weapons, although Super Slam does make it so you have an increased chance to knock down enemies if you're using a two-hand weapon as opposed to a one-handed weapon. The lead pipe is a one-handed weapon, but that's okay. And then you can also stack Purifier on this to get extra damage towards the various abominations of the Wasteland, which does help, although you're probably not going to be considering the lead pipe for like a late game weapon most of the time. It's mostly going to be good in the early and mid game, and then you're probably going to swap this off for something else as your go-to melee weapon. Either a unique version of something, or one of the stronger overall melee weapons like the War Club or the Katana or something like that. For an overall rating for the lead pipe, I'd probably put this thing into C tier, although it is very high C tier, because in the early game it is really good, and if you can find a couple of these, it does make the early game a lot easier for a melee build. But there is still some other good weapons that you can find early on, and as well as if you want to run and get some of them, it's not too difficult. Like Chance's Knife completely beats this, and like 90% of the other melee weapons. We kind of have to talk about that every time we talk about melee weapons, but assuming you're not doing that and you're just picking up stuff randomly, the lead pipe could actually be a pretty decent option, because it's better than quite a few of the other early game melee weapons that you get access to. It's better than like the kitchen knives, it's better than the police batons, the tire irons, I guess potentially the rolling pin. It's better than actually quite a lot of those. Maybe not better than the shovel that you can pick up in Good Springs, and maybe not better than like a baseball bat, which you could also get to this point. but is still one of the better melee weapons overall. There is a unique version of the lead pipe as well, so we need to talk about that, and that is called the Humble Cudgel. This one you can find in the sewers of New Vegas. So you have to go up into the sewers of New Vegas. It is found on a dead prospector or a dead member. I think they're actually named. You find somebody dead in the sewer and you can loot this off of their body. This one does look quite a bit different than a regular lead pipe because it's no longer just the straight lead pipe with the connector as the head of it. It's now like kind of a bent, more steel looking lead pipe, and it has like a T-joint attached to it, so you can kind of use that as like a hammer. It's kind of cool. You're gonna have to fight through some enemies to get to this, I believe, because usually the sewers have ghouls and rats. I don't think there's a whole lot of enemies near the actual body, so it's usually not hard to get to, but it is kind of out of the way to actually get this weapon. And this weapon's actually pretty decent. This one also requires 50 melee and 5 strength, just like the regular lead pipe. This one does a little bit more damage at 26 damage per hit, which is pretty good. Has quite a bit more DPS at 72. That is actually really nice. 26 crit damage, a 1x crit modifier, only costs 21 action points, funny enough, so this one's actually even better in a VATS build, and it's not bad overall. This one weighs 3, same as the normal pipe, and this one does have more item health at 75, so it's still going to break kind of fast, but it's not going to break as fast as regular lead pipes. This one's quite a bit better. It's almost on par with something like the War Club. It's just the War Club gets upgrades, which make it quite a bit better, mostly the attack speed upgrade that it gets, as well as it gets increased damage, so it's not quite on that level, but it is about on par with a standard non-upgraded War Club, so that's pretty good, but I don't think I could give this thing any higher than like a B tier. I don't think it's as good as some other melee weapons, especially ones that we've talked about, like the Katana that we recently went over. The Katana is a lot better than the Humble Cudgel, but yeah, the Katana does have upgrades, and it's probably just a stronger base weapon overall. This one's still not bad, and it still is a sneak-in weapon, so if you want to grab something just to take into casinos, it is kind of fun to wander around and just beat people with a lead pipe, I would say. But that's about it. It's going to still get outcompeted by other melee weapons in the late game, even like sneak-in weapons, because again, you could sneak in like Chance's Knife, Blood Nap, a couple of other like unarmed weapons like Love and Hate. That would probably be better than this one too. But it's still a pretty decent weapon. If you want to use it, you can absolutely use it for the entire game. It's not going to be one of the strongest options. So should you use the lead pipe? Maybe. In the early game, they're decent. Later on, probably not. Just because you're probably going to find better melee weapons. And if you're going with a dedicated melee weapons build, you're definitely going to be able to get better weapons and probably have them on you. But it's by no means a terrible weapon. It's like right in the middle of melee weapons. Tell me your thoughts on the lead pipe down in the comments below and its unique version. How do you enjoy using it? Thank you guys so very much for suggesting this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.